Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Yarns with Andy. Today, I've got Dave Morton, the principal engineer from CMW Geotechnical.
Geotechnical, yeah, that's right.
Mate, you and I both had a moment there. Mate, thank you so much for being here. This is a subject that is really, really important in terms of construction. Geotechnical engineering is a really, really important subject, and I'm really pleased that you're here to discuss this. I'm quite excited for the session. Can I get you to introduce yourself?
Sure.
To the
Yeah.
audience?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Andy.
Cheers, mate.
This isn't something normally I would go for.
Yeah.
I tend to fly under the radar a bit more than this. So I thank Ralph, who I work with, for getting me, or saying wasn't taking no for an answer really for this. So
Good on him.
So yeah, thanks, Ralph. But looking forward to it. It'll be good. A brief introduction who I am. So Dave Morton, principal geotech engineer at CMW Geosciences. I was a founding director of that company about 12 years ago. We set it up originally and grew it to about 200 people through New Zealand and Australia.
Wow.
And ended up selling middle of last year. So still doing operationally from a day-to-day point of view, nothing's really changed. Still a principal geotechnical engineer, mainly focused on technical delivery now rather than running a business. So a bit of a change for me, but still enjoying it. It's good.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
No, welcome.
Thank you.
Dave, geotechnical is a discipline that's always first in, first out. Yep. You almost a long lost memory as soon as the detail design is done. Where do you think the real value lies in what you do?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we are. You're right. We are involved at a very early stage, and projects have an evolving life cycle, I suppose. So when a geotech is first involved, it's usually for might be a zone change application or a resource consent application, or it might be for early planning, depending on the nature of the project. And at that point, there's typically not a great deal of funding for the project. It's in early stages and everyone's trying to do the bare minimum, I suppose. So
for context, at this point, is the concept design complete?
Yes, normally the concept design will be complete.
Yep.
And they're just after some form of planning approval, whether it's resource consenting or some other sort of approval, even plan change perhaps. So I use the example of, say, a mid-rise building, a 5 to 7 story type building, might be an accommodation block or something like that.
Yep.
The geotech engineer will have a very limited scope, and it's typically highly competitive at that point. So price is everything. So geotech engineers are racing or scraping to the bottom of the barrel in terms of price.
Yep.
If you push scope too much, you simply won't win the work. So I guess that's in that building construction game where that's relevant. Other sectors, like government agencies, not so much, so they understand risk a lot better. But typically in the building development, it's the bare minimum at those early stages of the project.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, okay. You're racing to the bottom of the barrel, so which means you're not producing a great output at that particular point in time. You're delivering the bare minimum.
I think you're addressing what geotechnical risks may be on the site and how you may deal with those.
Yep.
It won't provide any specific detail around design, or there'll certainly still be a lot of uncertainty. Like if that building's going to be piled, you might have 3 or 4 locations where you know what the pile depth is in between. You can make an educated guess, but educated guess are very risky. And that's where
Especially
a lot
in
of
New
projects, especially in New Zealand.
Yep.
Yeah, we are a geologically dynamic country, very young, and lots of differing ground conditions across the space of one building platform. So just I think from that point moving forward in a project is where it becomes very critical on how it's managed and what additional investigations and what additional geotech work is done through to pre-construction and contracts let for construction.
But come back to the original question. What's the true value you add?
So the true value is providing robust ground models and to reduce the uncertainty and the risk in the ground. It's something we can't see. So everything under the ground, the job's finished, done, lovely, buildings built. No one sees what's in the ground. But we know that a large part of the risk of that building is in the ground. So
the biggest risk on most construction, high-rise buildings, is underground, isn't it?
Absolutely, it can be. Yeah, I guess there's a little more certainty once you're out of the ground. You've been there before, you've done that before, but every site has its own unique characteristics under the ground. So understanding those and the importance of a robust ground model is key to good geotech.
I can attest to that as a planner, mate. I've processed a lot of delay claims in my time.
Yeah.
And the first delay claim is always ground conditions.
And it's not always just the ground conditions, it's how the ground conditions interact with whatever work you're doing. So
Absolutely.
it may be piling, it may be retaining walls. That, the ground conditions might be absolutely fine and consistent, but I've seen examples where you're vibrating pile casings into the ground for a perimeter retaining wall, and you do one and then you do another one next to it, and it liquefies the ground, and then all the concrete from the previous pile leaks out into the countryside. And, it's just that's soil behaviour as a result of what you're doing. That ground was quite stable before you come along and do your technique to improve the ground or to construct the basement or whatever you might be doing. So understanding how it's going to behave during construction, not just long term, is quite key.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for your insights on that, mate. It was really cool. Dave, can you get us through how geotechnical is important in an infrastructure project and give us an example?
Yeah, sure. So look at a roading project, for instance, which is a linear, might be several kilometres in length.
Yep.
You're doing an investigation, geotech investigation, to define the ground model and identify the risks and to design the ground improvements or the remediation techniques so that road performs to the design criteria. So, depending on budgets and time and I suppose access will dictate how many investigations you do on that project. And we're always trying to infer ground conditions between investigation locations best we can. We don't get that right all the time. And so, you might have a deep gully that you're filling up and you're preloading or surcharging to reduce post-construction settlements and make sure the roads performs to settlement criteria. Knowing where to start and stop that embankment requires a whole lot of investigation or geological knowledge, but making sure you've got enough monitoring during construction to verify that, yes, I have captured all the soft ground for that surcharge and you've covered all those risks is quite key. So right through from the initial investigation, ground model again is very, very important. And then making sure that you're verifying your ground model along the way during construction. It's really key.
What's the risk if you do not capture a section of soft ground? What are the consequences?
The consequences for that particular example is, okay, you're building a road over soft ground. It'll be a fill embankment with a few meters, several meters of fill. If you haven't captured it, well, you'll get construction after you've constructed your pavement. You'll get settlement, after you've constructed your pavement. So
your road sinks.
So you'll end up with a road that's waving like this. And there's plenty of roads in New Zealand that are 50 plus years old that haven't been geotechnically designed that you see that on. And there might be a few cases of more recent roads where it's still happening. So understanding the extent of the problem and remediating it appropriately.
What happens if you have a culvert on the ground for your road settles?
So, well, there's two cases there. If you haven't piled the culvert, it'll just sink with the ground, which is probably a less obvious outcome. But often the structure will have a more robust foundation, i.e., piles, and the ground on either side won't, and you end up with a big speed bump there long term as the ground settles away from the structure. Yeah.
So the risks are high, and is that why we have wavy roads in New Zealand?
Is that why we have what, sorry?
Wavy roads in New Zealand?
Wavy roads? Oh, look, a lot of our roads are historical, right? So they're just either widened or improved from an original farm track. So yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of roads like that, but typically they're country roads. I think the roads that we build now are fantastic facilities.
They're great.
They're wide. They're built to a very high level of quality and appropriate geotech, in my experience. Normally is always.
So are you attributing good geotech as a key contributing factor to better roads today?
Absolutely. People say they're expensive to build, and they are, but they are. The latest roads that are getting built now, greenfields roads, are, I think, an outstanding quality.
Yeah, fair enough. That's cool.
So, Andy, a lot of your questions are around, well, I get the feeling that projects where they've gone wrong in the ground. Just interested in what your experiences around that space may look like, just for context.
So what I do is I'm a planner. I draw lines on a piece of paper and I process a lot of delays. But I've come across a lot of delays, and most of those delays, the start of the delays come from ground risk. Extension of piles being a key one. increase in the quantity of piles. Yep. So from my perspective, I process the delay. Yep. But the problem I have with that is the design only picks up the need for the additional piles or the additional pile length after the design's complete, after the IFCs are issued. So I'm not sure why that happens. So from my perspective, I go, oh yeah, piling length's increased. Cool. Now I'm going to portion the production rate to it, increase the quantity, impact the critical path. Here's your impact. All right.
And these changes are occurring after the construction contract is awarded and once the contract is on the ground.
Once the piling guys have started on the ground.
Yeah, that's when it's expensive, right?
It's crazy expensive at that point. It's insane at that point. Like think about it. Now the piling contractor's got to order additional piles.
Yeah.
Yep. Change in methodology. Project's running late, right? The main contractor's scrambling to find additional resources.
Yep.
Yeah. Call up your piling contractor and go, hey mate, you got another piling crew for me?
Yeah.
And then you go, right, shit, now I've got fucking 2 piling rigs. Sorry. I'm not allowed to swear.
Yeah.
I got 2 piling rigs on site and I've got to manage the space on site. It's logistics constraints. Right. There's a whole heap of other things that the main contractor hasn't worked out, right? Suddenly he's got to work out in a span of 5 days to then keep up to the program.
Sure.
Yep. So why does that happen that late in the piece? Like that's quite interesting for me. I see the back end of it. I don't fully have the knowledge of why that happens so late in the piece.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to know though.
Yes, so would I.
So would you?
Yeah, look, I think I can probably talk to it a little bit. Often in Auckland is tricky, right? So you might have on one side of your site soft ground, and that's the need for piling that structure because the settlements are unacceptable and you need to found it on something more competent. And on the other side of that same site, you might have really strong, hard basalt at the ground surface. So getting the foundation solution right can be quite tricky on certain sites. And understanding how hard that basalt is absolutely key because that will blow out your program. If you've got downhole hammers operating and it's taking twice as long, 10 times as long to dig that rock out, it might have been better just to do a pad foundation in that corner of the site. So, look, liaison and team environments in those tricky sites, probably any site when it comes to construction, is key. And that's where, I couldn't advocate more strongly for rapport amongst your geotechnical designers, your structural designers, your civil designers, and your contractor. And a lot of the time, contract procurement won't permit the contract to be involved at that early point, but having a good rapport and working with everyone rather than in a protracted contractual sense. The amount of times problems just get accentuated because everyone covers their own butts, really, rather than, look, this is a team, let's all roll up our sleeves and get the job done, best for project. Well, don't worry about your liability. It's easy to say, but just get the job done. And the outcome will always be way better than everyone just looking after their own little section of the job.
Yeah. But okay, just talk about how that entire scenario works, right? So you got basalt on the ground, you got cool. So you got down the whole hammer, break through the basalt, cool. Get your piling in. Yep. The pile hits solid surface and pretty much you then put your ground beams. Yep. The ground beams are supported by the pile then at that point, aren't they? Yep. So they're really supported by the pile. So even if you have minor settlement on the ground, okay. Yep. It's not ideal, but doesn't really matter at that point.
No.
Cool. So the whole geotech aspect there is understanding how deep your piling has to go, isn't it?
And understanding how deep it is at a certain location, because you might have a 20 meter deep pile at one point and a 5 meter deep pile at another.
Yep.
So back to the point I made earlier about at the start of a geotech investigation stage, might be a resource consent, you'll do the bare minimum because the geotech is competitive and you don't have budget to do a large scope. But making sure that scope is progressed throughout the different stages of the project. So when it comes to detailed design and building consent, you need a lot more investigation. And you may need more between that stage and construction. If a piling project is coming out and there's, 100 piles on a site and they've got maybe 10 locations where they know what the ground conditions are, how can you say there's no risk? There is risk.
Absolutely.
You could be the best engineer and geologist, geotechnical engineer in the world, and you can predict what you think the ground conditions are going to be between. Really, we don't know. Well, we do have an idea, but that's where surprises come. So, to put a CPT rig or, cone penetrometer rig that just pushes a cone in the ground and finds out the ground conditions or where the depth to heart is, spend a day doing that at a whole bunch more pile locations can be money well spent.
So
prior to,
typically, how many times do you get called for investigations? So do you get called at concept design? Yes?
Absolutely. You get invited to tender at that stage. Yep.
You get invited to tender. Cool. Then the design's now progressed. You move on to developed and detailed design or prelim design. That's prelim.
Yep.
Which stage do you get called in for more investigations?
Well, often it's building consent is you'll always get another crack at it because it's a process that goes through a regulatory body like a council issuing a consent.
Yep.
So you get the chance to dictate what investigation needs to be done to apply for a building consent.
At detailed design.
That'll be at detailed design stage, absolutely. Yep. And so that's really the last opportunity from a process point of view that you're given an opportunity to do investigations. Yep. Between there and construction, you may say in your report that you need to do more or you may not. But in my experience, not a lot is done after that detailed design stage prior to construction, so unless the contractor specifies it or does it under their own contract price.
Yeah, because what happens once that detailed design's issued is it goes straight to the main contractor, and the contractor starts developing his methodology. He starts putting an entire program together. That's where I come into play.
Yep.
And then you start procuring contractors. So if the main contractor, how many main contractors would call you in between that phase and before they even procure a piling contractor?
I'll look in the civil infrastructure and roading space.
Yep.
Probably all the time.
Cool. Yeah, and they probably need to. They don't have a choice.
Yeah, I think so. And generally it's a much larger project with a much larger budget, and so they spend a bit of money.
Yep.
To put their tender together.
Yep.
So.
And it's
just the way it is.
And it's taxpayer funded.
Yeah, totally.
Yep. It's not privately funded, so it makes a big difference.
Yep. But it's part of business in that space from our experience. It's just it's what's done. It's what's been done for a long time. In the vertical build space, much less. Though I would say, in my experience, probably 10% of the time, I see additional investigations being done by the contractor between detailed design and construction.
Can I just dig into the value for a contractor in doing that between detailed design and actually starting piling on site, getting that geotech investigation done a lot earlier? What's the value for the contractor if they call you in between those time periods?
It's probably the value for the client rather than for the contractor. If the
well, hang on. No.
Depends how what tags they're putting in their tender, right?
Yeah. So So here you got a designer, right? The designer's gone, cool, you're not going to have any more pile length increases. We've done our geotech investigation, mate, it's on point. Yep. Guess what? It's never on point. You and I both know it's never on point. Yep. Okay, cool. You start piling, it's in delay, and the contract is now signed up to a fixed price or whatever with an end date, and ask me how difficult it is to get EOTs.
Yep, sure. Okay.
So it's not the easiest thing to do.
Right.
You're having a shift fight with an engineer all the time. I say engineer, I mean engineer to the contract. Yep. It's not the easiest thing. That's why a lot of main contractors spend a lot of time getting their programs right in the first place, or they try to. Yep. Well, we try to. Yeah. But so it's a risk for the contractor and for the client.
Yep.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a risk to both of them.
Sure.
Yeah. Because the client doesn't get his building on time.
Yes.
But then the client's protected by the liquidated damages that the main contractor pays. So where the risk sits is
okay.
It's an conversation.
So you've signed yourself up to a lump sum contract with LDs. Okay.
Yep.
So in that case, the contractor covers his risk by spending minimal money just to, if it's a piling job, for instance, do more tests at each pile location. It sounds extreme, and it may be extreme for some sites. I've had experiences on jobs where we've had, you've got a rectangular shaped building, not particularly big, might be 50 metres long by 20 metres wide. And we've got 5 tests, right? You do 1 test in each corner, 1 in the middle. Seems reasonable.
Okay, so is that really expensive for a main contractor to do?
No, not really, no. Not in terms of his contract price.
It's not. When you compare the contract price, you just go, okay, actually, let's compare it to something else. Compare it to his liquidated damages.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't even compare, right?
Doesn't even compare?
No.
So it just makes sense to get more geotech investigation done the minute they're ink their contract.
Absolutely. Why not? You know, you might pay $7 or $8,000 for a CPT rig for a day to go and push some probes in the ground.
Yep.
So you can tell me that that's not much money in terms of LDs.
Yep, it's not. Sorry, I just did the math in my head. No, it's not.
Yeah.
So you said $7 or $8,000 per day for a CPT. And how many CPTs would you do in a day?
Look, it does depend on the ground conditions, but you might get, if you're going 20 meters, you might get 8 or 10 done or something like that.
So if I only had 100 piles, I'm technically paying you what, 50, 60 grand. That's a day's worth of LDs for me.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of expenditure up front can save a lot of pain for sure.
Yeah.
But look, that'll tell you the depth to those hard ground conditions. It might not necessarily tell you how hard it is, right? That's just pushing a probe to hard ground. So
yeah.
It doesn't get rid of all the risks. It certainly helps.
Can I ask you then, why is it not done at design stage? When you get to you've done your concept design, you know your pile locations. Yep. Okay. So then why wouldn't I send a CPT down every single pile location at design stage?
I guess there's budget allowances. I can't look. I'm not an asset owner. I'm not a client, not a developer. But I guess there's budget constraints around every stage. You know, the original concept design, you have a certain budget, and you do be a minimum, and then at detailed design stage, you'll have a certain budget, and the geotech often it may still be competitive, or it may then by that stage have a robust team that's just going straight to the sole source. But I guess it's budget. Everyone's concerned or aware of what they're spending of the client's money. So the less you can do and still provide a robust ground model in the designer's mind, the better, I suppose. But you know, it's not traditional to do an investigation at every pile location. You know, the only time I've seen it is when a contractor's requested it or done it off their own bat.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Sorry, man, I'm just beating some ideas around to actually get a better understanding of what happens in your world, which is
sure.
It's really good insights. I'm loving it. It's cool.
Good.
Yeah. Good. So Dave, you've started a geotech company. You've been in the field for a long time. What qualities do you need? And what qualities do you look for in a good geotechnical engineer?
Yeah, sure. Look, well-rounded individuals, to be honest.
Yep. Like in most fields?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, we always take pride in training our engineers to be well-rounded consultants. So communication and being able to talk to people is absolutely key.
Yep.
So, you know, you'll be involved in winning work, writing proposals, talking to clients earlier on. Technically sound, obviously, that goes without saying. But then also, you know, dealing with people on site. So a big part of what we do and what we believe. So our motto is great people, practical solutions.
Cool.
And I'm quite passionate about that, really. So,
yeah,
you know, not saying we're technically the best in the world, but we're practical. We are willing to take on ideas from other people. So that might be a contractor, might be a client, might be anyone. So we think we come up with some reasonable ideas, but, you know, not ashamed to be challenged or too proud to be challenged on those, you know. So
yeah, cool.
So, you know, having an open mind, communicating openly, building rapport, so having a good team to deliver projects. So, you know, working in that space with trusted advisors and not having to tender all your work. You know, no, tender is a process that has to happen, and that's fine. But I find certainly in the design phase of projects, if you have a trusted team that you go around and hunt and pack, so to speak, and you get a better outcome.
Did you say Ralph?
Yeah, big part of what Ralph does. I think. Well, if Ralph has done his job, so Ralph is one of our work winning people. So if Ralph does his job properly, we'll build a team, and we've got to deliver that job, right? So Ralph makes a whole lot of promises. We've got to deliver. There's no better BD than, you know, delivery on time and doing what you said you were going to do, right?
Absolutely, mate. So if you look at my business, I don't really go tendering for work.
Yep, sure.
It's word of mouth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people literally just give me a call and say, "Hey, Andy, we have a problem. Can you come have a look at this?" Yeah. Literally, mate. That's literally my life. It's like I spend it on the phone. I'm like, "Oh, that cool. Yeah, come. I'll check it out." You know. Sometimes I'm actually even working without a contract. So.
Yeah, right. That's great.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Like it's
and it's a great place to operate in because your value is appreciated, and you're not trying to sell something that someone's not valuing. And I say that, and we operate in a whole lot of different markets, from large roading infrastructure projects through to vertical builds, right through to private developments. So a lot of the work we do is large scale earthworks, land development type projects, which have their own technical challenges, or the same technical challenges really, particularly working in New Zealand. But a lot of the time in that space, the value's not, I guess, understood. And it's really driven by the authorities, your councils and whatever conditions they put on consent. So it is a little harder working in that space initially, making sure that value is understood. And a lot of the time, the geotech's done on a site that really doesn't have a lot of risks. So it's just seen by those private developers as a cost and a box ticking exercise. So,
but it's not, though, is it?
It's not.
I mean, it's not until you end up in delay. You know what I mean?
But some of those projects, it's pretty straightforward, and the ground conditions are really good, and you don't need a lot of involvement. So not overcooking things when they don't need to be is quite important as well.
So it's training your guys up to actually identify where you're needed more and when.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's say I was a young engineer and I'm getting into engineering. I'm a student.
Yep.
Why would I come into geotech? Is it exciting? Is it why?
Look, I think I sort of stumbled on geotech, to be honest. When I first went to university, I liked maths and science, and there was this earth science paper that I took, and that was my favourite paper in my first year. So I threw all my direction into earth sciences and geology, which is my first degree. So I think the great thing about it is I find it genuinely interesting. It gives you a great mix of field-based and office-based work. So, you're tertiary trained, but you get a lot of time in the field, spend a lot of time in the field doing physical work. And, there is a risk that a lot of geotech engineers go straight from the classroom to the design room. And, I see that as quite risky. They should all do their time.
Why?
Well, because they don't understand how soil and rocks behave. So you need to be in the field, investigating it, drilling holes, rolling your sleeves up, getting your hands dirty, understand how things behave. It's one thing to learn in a textbook, another thing to actually see it and breathe it in real life.
Absolutely.
So, I'm a big fan of that, making sure that guys go through their right apprenticeships and do all those good things out in the field. And it suits young people's lifestyles. They get to travel around, and, you keep fit, and, it's physical work. It's great fun. And then your career progresses through. So being well-rounded, I think, is really important.
Does it excite you that you don't know what's in the ground?
Not really. It scares me.
Scares you. No, that's really cool. Hopefully that gives some people some insights into why they should choose geotech as a profession.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
cool. Dave, can you touch on more of the soft skills that are required to be a geotech engineer? You touched on that a little earlier, but let's dig into that a little deeper.
Yeah, sure. It's probably not even specific to a geotech engineer, to be honest. I think a young person starting their career should take their job seriously, but don't take themselves too seriously.
Right. Tell me more.
I think what I mean by that is, don't be too precious and proud of what you've come up with. You might be a young designer and you've come up with a design that's gone through a design review process and gets issued by your company, and it's something you're quite proud of, and then goes out to tender or goes out to, a team to price, and they may have better ideas and come back to you, cool. Why not do this? Why not do that? And I think just be open to that whole process and go, well, actually, no, I didn't think about that. Don't be too proud. And just, there's a lot to learn, going out and doing a geotech investigation. The beef farmer on the site that's being carved up for a development, he will know a whole lot of information, really valuable information from a geotech perspective about that site. Right. You'll never find out. There'll be a gully out the back that he's filled up or something like that, right? So they've got a whole lot of value to add to that project, right through to the guy driving the diggers and the rollers on a site, during construction. They've got a whole lot of experience. They're out doing that every single day. You're writing a specification on how to compact something, for instance. Those guys have valuable information and value to add on a project. So just, be open, involve everyone, and be receptive to change and challenge of the work you do. So I think that's really important.
So nobody comes to work and says, I want to do a bad job today.
No, of course.
Yep. Okay. So I'm a strong believer that your environment actually either helps you do a good job or not. That environment being the place you work in, the people you're surrounded by. You've grown that company from one person, or how many founders there?
We started, yep.
Three to 200. So how do you believe you've created that environment for people to thrive in?
Oh, look, I think putting good people in environments where you know it's going to work. So what I mean by that is we have an office manager at every location that we have an office. So putting a good office manager, people that we've crossed paths with in the past, people that we know, good people skills, and then putting them in where we know there's work, and we may have clients there, or we may not. We know of work in that space, and then letting those guys go and flourish. And it's really cool to watch, actually. So it's really a whole bunch of mum and dad type businesses, quite small businesses that together form a reasonable size. It's 200. You go, wow, no, surely not. But each one of our offices is probably no more than 30 people.
Yeah.
And so, anywhere from 10 to 30, I suppose, is our main numbers. So,
yeah.
Collectively you put all those together and it's a reasonable sized business, but individually they're just small businesses that have got a lot of really good relationships with their clients. And
yeah. It's interesting. I'm actually going through the same conundrum.
yeah. You can't do it all yourself is the only thing I've learned. So having the right people in the right place and trusting that they will,
do a good job,
the right thing, help mentor them and guide them along the way.
Yeah.
But certainly let them go.
Because I started strategic planning 2 years ago, and I've had this big mental block of hiring people. It's been one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make. Hire people.
Yeah, and you've got to do it before you need them. I think you've got to sacrifice a bit of bottom line.
Yeah.
Get them in before you need them. If you get them in too late, you don't have time to train them and mentor them and guide them and help them. So
it's actually good advice.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool advice.
It's actually something I learned since we started CMW. There was the three of us that started, and one of the guys was always saying, right, we'd just got on our feet and won a few jobs and just starting to see a little bit of money come in the door, and that always takes longer than you expect too.
Yep.
And he starts saying, as soon as the first check's paid, right, who are we going to employ? And we're going, oh, hang on.
Yeah.
But continuously challenge yourself to hire more people before you need them. I think it's a really good tip.
Mate, hiring my first one is scary enough. I had to get myself a mental health coach to break through those barriers to actually hire somebody.
It's not easy.
It is not easy. Right?
No,
it's
absolutely.
not. Yeah. So now I always joke about it, and I keep telling Bridge as well, I don't have 3 mouths to feed. It's my wife and 2 children. I've actually got 5 mouths to feed now. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff. Now, mate, well done on the growth of your company. It's some few valuable lessons there, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
For me too, just learning more about it. Dave, we know you're an avid surfer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how has riding waves influenced your professional life?
Oh, I don't think they're related at all.
No, you keep the 2 lives separate?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. I think surfing takes your mind off everything. I think when there's a lot of different components to surfing. You spend hours in the water, but the actual time riding a wave is a very small part of that.
Yeah.
But when you are actually riding a wave, you're thinking of nothing else apart from exactly what you're doing on that wave. It is just absolutely mind consuming. So I love that part, that there's no way you can't take your mind off work if you're surfing. It's so you're committed to that particular moment in time, and working out where you're going to do your next turn and trying to make the next section, and how you're going to get back out the back or whatever it might be. I find that mind consuming part of surfing really cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. I kind of feel the same way about snowboarding.
Yeah, right.
Hence the snowboards.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to snowboard before I came to New Zealand. I'd never even seen snow before I came to New Zealand.
Are you making the most of the conditions this year?
Mate, unfortunately, I haven't actually been down to the mountain this year.
Yeah, one of the best seasons in a long time.
Yeah, every time I've had the opportunity to go, there hasn't been a season, or we've been in lockdown.
Yeah, sure.
But I might actually pack up and go to Japan in Jan.
Nice.
Who knows? We'll see.
We'll
see. Yeah. No, I get what you mean though. It's you go surfing to take your mind off things, completely forget about the rest of the world, relax.
Yep.
I have an interesting, funny, almost a near-death experience with surfing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was in Bettles, I think.
Yes.
Bettles.
West Coast, yep.
Yep. I was learning how to surf, but obviously without these I can't see.
Right.
So I've got pretty thick glasses too. So I was down there, tried to catch this wave. I wasn't really far out or anything. I'm not a good surfer. Got smacked, went under, came back up, got smacked in a different direction with another wave.
Yep.
That happened about 4 times. And before I knew it, I was getting pushed towards the rocks.
Oh, really?
Yep. I almost died that day.
Wow.
I haven't been back in the water since.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think learning to surf is one of the hardest things I've probably ever done. You know, it was a long time ago, but there's so many variables, you know, that everything's moving. And so to actually get yourself in a position to catch a wave and try and stand up, there's a whole lot of stuff that's got to happen before that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the thing about snowboarding. The snow's not actually moving.
Exactly. You've got one constant.
One constant.
Yeah.
And the board's actually strapped to my foot.
Yep.
The board is me. I am the board.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? It's part of me. It's not like surfing. I find surfing extremely difficult, but that's just
I think a lot of people that don't surf, they look at the water and they go, wow, there's waves today. I'm going to go and try surfing. And you know, if you're going to learn surfing, you want to go out when you can hardly see the waves, when it's small. And that's controlling your environment a little bit more. Yeah. And something that's a little bit more manageable for a beginner or a novice. So, you know, when it's big, it's really tough. Like just trying to get out. It's a lot of physical effort.
But that moment I caught my first wave though.
Yeah.
Oh mate, what a magical moment.
Yeah, totally. Look, I'm not a addictive person, but surfing, when I first did that and rode along an unbroken wave, it's just something that, you know, it is addictive. It's, it's something you never forget.
I know, mate. Like I didn't even ride a massive wave. Like
no, it
was a small wave, and I rode it all the way to the shore though. Like I mean, just almost up to the shore, and I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Yeah. It'd be cool if I could see and ride waves. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's good fun. And, you know, surfing takes you around the world. You get to see some lovely places and take family, and they're all into surfing as well. And
cool.
You know, that's really cool. So it's good holidays, good active family holidays.
Hey, nice.
Yeah.
What else do you do for fun?
Bit of mountain biking.
Cool.
Used to do more than I do now. I think I've just sort of taken up golf too in the last 12 months. And
how are you finding golf?
Oh, look, I love golf. I used to play golf a little bit in the past. You know, I was at university and things, but right through having families and working, I never had time for it. But I do wonder if I've taken it up maybe 10 years too soon, because it is, as soon as you take it up, it takes up a bit of time. And it's something for me anyway, I never master it. So you're always trying to constantly improve.
Yeah. Maybe we should put you in touch with Claire from the Attention Seekers. She actually runs a thing called On Pass Society.
Oh, sure.
It's quite a cool golfing event where you're like playing golf with all of these different professionals, but it's just in a driving range.
Yeah, right.
It's actually quite cool.
That would be.
I actually went for one of these events. It was really social and it was a lot of fun. Maybe we should come along for the next one, mate.
Absolutely.
We'll get Ralph to sign you up for that one.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. Anyways, mate, I think we've been talking for a bit now. It's been great having you, and I really appreciate all the insights into geotech and the world of geotech has to offer.
Oh, thanks for having me, Andy. It's been really enjoyable. I've enjoyed the experience.
It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot. Cheers, Andy.